let's stop encouraging our players to return serve down the center of the court. Down the middle does not solve the riddle. There you go, I said it. Well, I mean, sometimes it does, I guess. Let's imagine there's two players, player A and player Z. Player A is the good player. Player is amazing. Now, when that return of serve gets hit down the center of the court, let's say 100 times in a match, how many of those times is player A going to take the ball? Well, it's going to be 100. I don't know many sports where it is good strategy to give your other team's best player the ball 100 out of 100 times. That seems silly to me. All right, pickleball coaches, let's stop encouraging our players to return serve down the center of the court. Down the middle does not solve the riddle. There you go, I said it. Well, I mean, sometimes it does, I guess. But I see a lot of the time when we're coaching pickleball that what we do is we say to our players, hey, return the serve down the center of the court, go right down the middle. But why is that? Why do we do that? Well, I think that there's two main arguments. Let's unpack them. Argument number one is it may cause confusion, right? You and I are playing together. Our opponents return the ball down the center of the court. I think you're going to take it. You think I'm going to take it. In the end, nobody takes it, right? Or we're both going to take the ball and then we go crashing into each other, right? That could happen. There could be miscommunication. That's true. But what would happen after you and I have that miscommunication? Either no one hits the ball or we both hit the ball. Isn't it true that we would just then talk about it and say, hey, partner, this didn't work out very well. What are we going to do next time they return the ball down the center of the court? And then we are going to make a plan. So I think at best, for like any sort of decent team, at best, returning serve down the center of the court works once, right? It works once because if it works that one time, then they have a conversation, then they don't get fooled and confused by those down the middle balls anymore. By the way, good teams don't wait to lose a point before they have that conversation, right? They know right off the bat what's going to happen when the ball gets returned down the center of the court. And you, as a coach, when you're working with players, you should really encourage them. Hey, before the serve is even hit, before you step on the court, they should have a conversation. Hey, what is going to be the plan for different balls down the center of the court, including the return of serve? Don't let your players give away free points because they're not communicating. So what's the second argument? If that first argument's not so good, returning the ball down the center of the court causes confusion, maybe once, not a super strong argument. What's the second? Well, it just has to do with the geometry, right? If you aim down the center of the court, you can miss 10 feet to the left and the ball's still in play. You can miss 10 feet to the right and the ball is still in play. It gives a greater margin for error. And that is true. I can't argue with that, right? But I would suggest that unless you're playing, coaching really, really beginning players, most players don't need a 20-foot margin for error when hitting a return of serve. Right? They shouldn't. By any time they're sort of like novice or above, they should be able to start to direct it a little bit. So that second argument, return down the center of the court because it gives you the biggest margin for error. I mean, I guess it's technically true, but I'm not sure whether it's that necessary for most players. Now, what is the drawback of having your players return the serve down the center of the court? Well, I think it's a pretty obvious one. Let's imagine there's two players. Let's imagine there's player A and player Z. Okay, player A, player Z. Player A is the good player. Player is amazing, either because that they're like just always amazing, they're always the better player on the court than player Z, or they just happen to be having a really great day, right? They're really on. So you got player A, player Z. Now, when that return of serve gets hit down the center of the court, let's say 100 times in a match, how many of those times is player A going to take the ball? Well, it's going to be 100. Right? Because when that ball goes down the center of the court, you are essentially inviting the other team to let the best player hit that ball. Or if it's not the best player, like whoever they choose to hit that ball. So player A, player Z, player A is great. 100 balls get returned right down the center of the court. 100 balls are going to be hit by player A. Now, I don't know. I'm not an expert in all sorts of sports, but I don't know many sports where it is good strategy to give your other team's best player the ball 100 out of 100 times. That seems silly to me. And I think you know this at home, right? As a coach, don't you regularly work with your players to target someone, figure out who on the other team is more likely to make a mistake, who on the other team isn't so strong, and how do we get the ball to them more often? I'm sure you do that if we're talking about competitive pickleball. So why wouldn't we do that with the return of serve as well? Why wouldn't we use that same principle, that same idea? Like, hey, let's target a particular person when we're hitting the return of serve. I think it makes sense. Now, of course, it doesn't always have to be whoever the weaker player is. That's the one that we aim to, right? Maybe your opponents are about equal level. So what are the other factors you might consider? Well, maybe one player is like a lot taller. Maybe let's call player N and player O, N and O, and they're about the same skill level. That's why they're so close in the alphabet, N and O. Same skill level, but you know what? N is quite tall, and O is not so tall. Well, guess what? When our opponents are hitting the third shot, wouldn't it be nice to have the taller player hitting that third shot? Why? Well, if you hit the ball to the shorter player, that taller player is sort of freed up, right? They can start to move toward the net to start to apply pressure after that third shot gets hit. So one of the things I might prefer to do is I might prefer to return the serve to the taller player. That way, at least for the time being, they're hitting that ball from further away from the net. They're not going to be as much of a threat. This is often why in mixed doubles, at high-level mixed doubles, you often see the returns of serve hit toward the men. And it's not necessarily because the men are better players, but it's often because they're taller players. They're more of a threat up at the net. So there's another consideration for you. And again, if you return the serve down the center of the court, let's say the opponents would rather have the taller player at the net. They don't really care who hits the third, but all things being equal, they'd rather the taller player be up at the net. Well, if you return down the center of the court, that allows the shorter player O in my story, to hit that third shot and frees up player N to go forward. So coaches, when you're out there working with your players, are there times hitting the ball down the middle of the court makes sense? Sure, I guess so. But I think as a general rule, when you're working on the return of serve, get your players to start to think about, hey, who do we prefer hitting that third shot and why? And then when they're working on hitting their third shots, right, aim away from the corner. So one activity I like to do, we just call it black hole returns. It's very simple. It's essentially there's like a black hole in the center of the court. So you can either hit the return really cross court, right, back toward the server, or you can hit the return really down the line to the server's partner, but you're not allowed to hit to the black hole. Can't hit down the center of the court where either player could get their paws on it. And that's a good way just to start to retrain your players to avoid the middle on the return of serve to create more opportunities to go on offense. Welcome to Pickleball Coaches Podcast. I'm your host, Mark Renneson. Whoa, let's try that again. Welcome to Pickleball Coaches Podcast. I'm your host, Mark Renneson, and we are going to be back to talk more about coaching just after this. All right, a long, long time ago in a galaxy far away, I wrote an article called 6 Do's and Don'ts for Coaching Brand New Players, or something along those lines. And I thought this might be a good time to talk about that because we know what's happening in pickleball. There's so many new people coming into the sport. There's so much coaching that we're doing with new players, getting them involved. And I thought we might go over some of these do's and don'ts, at least for the first 20 minutes when you're working with new players. So first things first, don't talk about the history of the game. Nobody, I promise you, is going to your 101 pickleball lessons, learn to play pickleball, intro to pickleball, whatever the heck you like to call it. No one is going there for a history lesson. They're not. They're not going to go home to their family and talk about how pickleball was invented in 1965 in Bainbridge Island and, over time spread in different places. No, they don't care, or at least they don't care initially about that. So maybe down the road have that story, but people only have so much room in here, only so much stuff, especially when they're new to pickleball and they might feel overwhelmed. Don't waste any of your time or any of their brain space understanding the history of the game. Talk about it afterwards if you want. Send out an email, a Wikipedia link if you like, but this is not going to be crucial. This is not going to be important for those players at the beginning of their learn to play pickleball session. All right, next thing that you should not talk about in the first 20 minutes of pickleball, and I know this is a hot take, don't talk about the rules. The rules of pickleball, nobody cares, at least not right off the bat. Look, the fun part of pickleball, it's the exchange back and forth. It's the rallying over the net. It's keeping the ball going. It's having those back and forth moments. That's the fun part, right? No one is going to go home to their family and say, oh, did you know that you're allowed to reach over the kitchen because it's a two-dimensional surface? No, they don't care about that right off the bat. What they're going to care about is that they go home and they say, oh my God, we could only rally 3 or 4 balls at the start. 20 minutes in, we're now rallying 13 or 14. What a great coach we have. It is not important to learn the rules of pickleball to fall in love with pickleball, right? What the thing that's going to make them fall in love is to go out and to hit and to explore and to play and to hit balls off the bounce and to hit balls out of the air and to be able to sort of send those balls back and forth and have those rallies. And of course, some basic things like, hey, we should let the ball bounce before we hit it, or we should hit it out of the air, but the ball can't bounce twice. Okay, fine. That's a thing, right? Or, hey, try to keep it inside this big rectangle that we call the court. Okay, fine. But you don't need to give them the laundry list of pickleball rules before they start playing pickleball or start playing something pickleball adjacent. Okay. And what will happen, it's not just a neutral thing if you give them all these rules at once, is you'll see their eyes like start to glaze over because they don't have enough of a frame of reference of the sport in many cases to even like understand all these different rules and the context in which they apply. So my suggestion to you is don't worry about the rules, save those for later or sprinkle them in gently as you go, but really get your players playing right away. That's going to be so much more fun for them. Okay, in the first 20 minutes of pickleball, don't talk technique. They don't need it right away. You don't have to come and start talking about people's impact points or their setup or their grips or any of that stuff. Don't do it. Just let them go out and explore. Let them experiment. The technique will come sort of as they go. And you might still notice some things, right? If there's a major red flag, someone's holding the paddle upside down or something, okay, talk about it there. But very often what happens is people, when they come to their pickleball lessons, they're super nervous right off the bat. And you going in and trying to make all these like fine points about technique probably isn't going to do a lot of good for them. In fact, may do some harm, maybe compiling kind of the anxiety that they're feeling right off the bat. So one of the beautiful things about pickleball is that the barrier to entry is very low, sort of technique-wise. You know this as a coach. You see it all the time. There's people out there with pretty horrible technique who can still go out and have kind of a fun time. So I'm not saying the technique doesn't matter, right? Sometimes people misunderstand my position on this, but it doesn't matter for the first 20 minutes. It just doesn't, right? Get them going out there, get them thinking, maybe try to hit the ball in the center of the paddle, right? Maybe move to the ball a little bit instead of reaching for it. Those are technique adjacent things, but it's not going to be important that you're going into the stance or the grip or any of that stuff right off the bat. You can wait for that. Okay, in the first 20 minutes, do not get your players to shadow swing. I recently came back from a coaching trip in Vietnam, and a lot of shadow swinging going on out there, folks. Essentially having players stand in a line and one person's hitting the ball and everyone else is out there just pretending to hit shadow swings. They're useless. They're useless. They don't do very much. Pickleball is a game not about like perfecting some technique, like synchronized swimming or diving. It's about responding to a ball that's coming to you and then making that adjustment. So I get the idea that sometimes, if you have a moment where your players aren't hitting the ball, to do something useful to them, get them to do a quick little footwork thing or get them to hit volleys back and, to themselves or with a partner or something. Get them to get a drink of water. It's probably more useful than having them do shadow swinging. Shadow swings are basically useless kinds of tools. And in the first 20 minutes, do not worry about scoring. The scoring in pickleball is like one of the most complicated things. And for a lot of people, that's like very anxiety producing as they feel like they're doing a math project when they're out there. So don't worry about the scoring. My suggestion right off the bat is use some version of rally scoring. Like, hey, you hit the ball in the net. Well, I get a point. Or I hit the ball out of bounds. Oh, you get a point. People get that. That's intuitive, right? Most other sports, like that's kind of how it works. Do something good, get a point. Other team does something good, they get a point. That's a nice way to start. It really like lowers the temperature. It lowers the sort of like brain power that they have to devote to understanding scoring. And then down the road, you can start to introduce this idea of like, oh, hey, guess what? You know how we've been playing where every time there's a rally, someone gets a point? Hey, that's one way to play. But there's another way, which is you don't actually get the point unless you were the serving team. But save that for later. That doesn't need to be in the first 20 minutes.
Hey, have you heard of the new Play More app?
No, what is it?
Basically, the Play More app is like a stress-free scheduling app for pickleballers. So I don't know, we've struggled a lot in group text trying to organize play. You'll set it up and somebody will just like the text. And I'm like, does that actually mean you're coming or not?
Yeah, and it's like, you never know how many people you have, like what rating they are. It's kind of annoying.
It can kind of just be a nightmare to try to organize groups because group texts are just not fun. So basically the Play More app lets you send out invitations. You get an RSVP list. If somebody doesn't show, there's a wait list that will actually like put somebody right into.
No way.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Dang, that's awesome. What's it called?
It's called the Play More app. So you should download it at the App Store, or you can go to getplaymore.com if you want to look at it online.
Welcome back to Pickleball Coaches Podcast. I'm Mark Renneson. Today we are talking about the things that you should and should not do in the first 20 minutes when you are teaching beginners. Now, we've just talked about all the things you shouldn't do, but I don't want to be a Debbie Downer here. I want to be a success seeker. I want to be someone who talks about the things we should do in the first 20 minutes. So the first one you should do is you should make sure you learn people's names. Learn them quickly. I do not like the idea that you put name tags on your students. Why? Well, if I have a name tag on players' chest, I don't actually need to remember their name. I can just look at the name tag, right? And that seems like a good idea. You might say, well, hey, Mark, you want to learn their name. There you go. It's right there for you. But no. Why do I want to learn their name? So there's two reasons. One is the professionalism reason, right? It makes them feel cared for when they hear their name, and that's good. You want your players to feel cared for. But there's a second reason, and that's a safety reason, right? I want to be able to get their attention quickly if I need it. Now, let's say that your name is Guillaume, right? But I don't need to remember your name is Guillaume because you've got the name tag on. Well, that's fine, Guillaume, but what am I going to do when you're 3 courts away and there's a ball rolling behind your feet, or some dog or a child has run on the court and I want to get your attention fast, but we're 3 courts away, Guillaume. I can't see your name tag. What am I going to do? Now I've really got a problem. So it is vital that you, as a pickleball coach, really quickly learn people's names. Use a cheat sheet. Grab a piece of paper, write their name down, put a little note on it about, like Sammy uses a Selkirk or whatever it might be, and learn their names fast. 1, because it's going to make them feel good when you use it, and 2, because it's going to keep them a little bit safer if you've got to get their attention at the last second. All right, what else should you do in the first 20 minutes? You should make sure you identify some key safety rules. One of those rules should be, hey, when the coach says this word, insert whatever word you want, then that means stop. I like the word stop. Hold your ball, pause, freeze, whatever. Use your whistle. Right? Get their attention. You need to make clear to them how it is that you're going to communicate you want them to stop. And one of the safety rules is that they must stop right away. And you can even say, hey, I'm going to try never to say that right when you get that high forehand that you want to put away. But you know what? Even if I do, don't hit the ball. I don't want you to put it away because someone might get hurt because they're not paying attention because now they're looking at me. So one key safety rule to identify right away is how do you make sure to get their attention that they stop right away. You might talk about other things too, about balls rolling on the court. Hey, if a ball is ever rolling on our court, we stop the rally right away. Hey, your job is to keep the people in front of you safe. They may not see a ball rolling behind them when you're doing a drill or an activity or playing a game. And so your job is to, before you feed that next ball, to always look, is there a ball around or behind my practice partner on the other side? So you identify these key rules. I know some of you like the rule, no running backwards ever. I'm personally not a big fan of that one. We can talk about that on another show because, frankly, you do have to move backwards sometimes when you play pickleball. Or never chase a lob. I think that's silly too. You can have some nuance there. But whatever your sort of house rules are, make sure that you address those right in the first 20 minutes, like right off the bat. And that's one way to keep your players more safe. Another thing you should do in the first 20 minutes is ask your players to share with you privately any relevant health-related considerations that you should know about, right? So whether this is something that's done in advance and there's a form that they fill out, or whether you do it just like this, like, hey, everyone, really glad you're here. If there's any health-related thing I need to know about, please take me aside at some point early on and let me know. I usually make a joke then about, hey, I don't need to know your whole medical history, but if there's something that's going to impact what you can or cannot do, let me know. I've taught pickleball lessons before where people waited 90 minutes before they let me know that they had a pacemaker, and hey, Mark, if I collapse, I need you to go to the bag over there and pull out the thing that looks like the hockey puck and put it on my chest because that's going to reset my pacemaker. That is not something you should wait 90 minutes for before you tell your pickleball coach. I had someone else wait almost an hour before they told me that they were deaf in 1 year. That matters, right? Because how I'm going to give feedback to them or how I'm going to talk to the group, like, will change a little bit if I've got people that have trouble hearing. I had one person who waited, I don't know, half an hour before they told me they couldn't lift their arm beyond here because they had recently had shoulder surgery. That's a tough one for me to say, shoulder surgery. That's relevant to know, right? Because if we're working on balls, dealing with high balls, that's going to be tough. So do in the first 20 minutes, invite your players to privately tell you about any relevant health-related thing that you should know about. And most of the time there's nothing, but sometimes there's something. What else should you do in the first 20 minutes? You should let them try to rally. You should let them try to rally. You don't need to start with just hitting to yourself all the time. You've got to see what the starting point is. Not every Learn to Play pickleball program is the same. And while it's true that everyone plays pickleball for the first time, not everyone starts at the same starting point. You might have strong former or current tennis players now coming out to your Learn to Play pickleball program. You might have some young kids who are super athletic. I've seen before where like a former professional soccer player comes out. It's his first time playing pickleball, but he was so good at moving around the court. He had such a good sense of where the ball was going to end up and how to move to it, right? I've seen, some of you may have seen, one of the United States' most decorated Olympians ever, swimmer, I'm not going to say the name. If you've ever watched him play pickleball, it's atrocious because the skill set needed for pickleball as opposed to Olympic swimming are quite different, right? So it's really important that you get your players to try to rally right off the bat. So you as the coach can see, hey, who is it that we're actually working here with today? What is our baseline? What is our starting point? Another little benefit by getting them to rally right off the bat and kind of counting like, hey, what is the most we can do? Or what is our average is usually a better number. And say it out loud. Hey, what was your record? Okay, what was your average? Ooh, 3 in a row. Great. Well, at the end of the lesson, you can reference that initial baseline that you established with them. Hey, everyone, remember how an hour ago we could only rally 3 in a row? And look at you now, you're playing real games of pickleball. And by having that initial baseline, by trying to rally right off the bat and getting kind of what that number is, it's going to make it so much easier to do the before and after snapshots after your lesson. And they're going to go home and they're going to tell their families, hey, we could only rally 3 at the start. And an hour later, we were playing real games of pickleball. So in the first 20 minutes, get your players to try to rally. One of the things I also like to do with players in the first 20 minutes, especially if they're struggling, is to try throw pickleball. Throw pickleball. And throw pickleball is kind of like it sounds, where you put the paddles down and you've got to toss the ball underhand. And you could play all sorts of like little games like this. You could even play real games. You could even make a rule that, hey, if you intercept the ball out of the air, you don't have to throw it underhand anymore. You can throw it overhand. That's kind of like preparing them for this idea of volleying, right? Coming to the net. Guess what? It's tough to receive balls without a bounce if you're back at the baseline. But if you move forward, you can catch it out of the air. Now you can throw overhand. And so you can start to work on some of the tactical skills related to pickleball by taking the paddle out of their hands. And now they can think, assuming that they have an easier time catching it and throwing it than they do hitting the ball. You can start to work on some of the tactical things. Hey, here's some basic movement patterns that we would use. Hey, after you serve, you better stay back to let the ball bounce. And this is a good way for them to understand some of the basics of pickleball and pickleball play without sort of being distracted by the paddle. One of the other nice things about throw pickleball is because pickleball, in the end, is a game about chasing the ball. It's much more about moving and chasing than it is about hitting. I know hitting's the sexy part of pickleball, but you can have the nicest swing in the world, but if you can't get to the ball, you can't use it. So by playing throw pickleball and forcing players to move to catch the ball, it really starts to reinforce that reception skill, right? The receiving of the ball, which is so important. And finally, in the first 20 minutes when you're working with your new players, focus, please, just one skill at a time. I know you as a pickleball coach, you have so much knowledge and so many things that you want to teach them, and you might be looking out and say, oh, there's so many things that they need to work on and get better at. Your job, in part, is to edit, is to be the editor, to realize, hey, of the 25 things I see right now that we could work on, which ones should I choose? And the ones you're going to choose will probably depend a little bit on who you've got with you, how much time you've got, to work with your players, but also what skills are going to be easiest to learn and what skills are going to be most valuable to learn, right? So you need to do a little bit of editing and then work on that one skill at a time. And when you work on that one skill, let's say you're working on, making sure you hit the ball in the center of the paddle every time, make sure your feedback stays on that topic. So don't start talking about the grip or the setup or the impact point or the sensation or anything, because you're not talking about those. That's not where you've practiced. You've practiced hitting the ball in the center of the paddle. So stay focused on the one topic at a time, do that one well, and then you can start to layer and add new things on top of that. All right, we're near the end of this episode of Pickleball Coaches Podcast. I'd love to know what you think about it. Why not send me a note? info@pickleballcoachinginternational.com is a good way to do it. And while you're doing that, why not check out pickleballcoachinginternational.com or PCIpickleball.com. Makes it even easier. If you are a pickleball coach or you want to get started, PCI Pickleball might be just the thing for you. Our level 1 instructor certification program is 100% online, which means you can do it where you want, when you want, at your own speed, at your convenience. You do all the training online, then you go on a real court with real human beings. You set up your camera and you show us your stuff, your coaching credentials out there on the court. Show us what you can do. So if you're interested in pickleball instructor certification, why not check it out? PCIpickleball.com. Until next time, I'm Mark Renneson. Thanks for watching.